Do you guys want to have seats, or I see all those Romeos back there. So I just want to say welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is a tribute to Frank and Patricia Romeo. It's also a tribute to the town of North Reading and getting everyone engaged and helping out with the history and the preservation of this amazing little town. So we're going to start off today with Abby Romeo. She is my daughter and the granddaughter of Frank and Pat. She is going to sing the national anthem. So Abby, if you're done with your water and your preparation, Mary's going to start the music for you, okay?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby. Abby, you can have a seat. Thank you so much. And now let's draw your attention over to our Minutemen.
Yes, he did.
I know it's gotta happen, but I think it's...
Thank you guys so much. That's the one and only Billy Post right there. We owe him a lot. Now we have a statement from the president of the Historical Society, Matt Page. He is not with us, so his words will be read by Tommy Parker.
I'm Tom Parker, the curator and also secretary of the Historical Society, and also a past president. On behalf of the president, Matt Page, who cannot be here today, he asked me to say a few words, and I bring you welcome not only from him but also from our recent president, Ginny Mills, who is home after just recovering from, I'm sorry to say, a brief hospital stay. On behalf of Matt, President, he says these words: welcome to the Putnam House grounds. Wherever you live here in North Reading or are visiting from far away, you see how lucky we are to have this special place. A place where we and our neighbors can gather together and travel back in time to a different episode of our history. In the 1970s, the Society took action to rescue the Putnam House and the grounds from demolition and development. In doing so, they narrowly avoided an attempt, in the words of that famous song, to pay paradise and put up a parking lot. 5 decades later, our all-volunteer society is still working hard to preserve and protect the history of North Reading. Our focus is broad, spanning all the way from the period where the region's indigenous habitat hunted and fished here right through to the colonial era, the expansion of the town, and modern day development that represents our history to be. We are what every small town historical society aspires to be: active, ambitious, and uncommonly passionate about the place where we live. In this sense, we try to emulate Frank and Pat Romeo, whose love of North Reading, its history in this place, and all around us on these grounds. For us, the Society, the Romeos, are the best of the role models. Each and every day, we do our best to make them proud and honor their legacy. Many thanks to the Romeo family for their efforts to highlight our work and encourage you all, friends, family, and admirers of Frank and Pat, and join, donate, and volunteer for the Society. We are grateful to be the focus of their call to action. I can think of no better way to honor our two dear friends than to act upon it. Thank you again, and enjoy this afternoon, Matthew Page. I've also been asked to say a few words as well about my own personal history with Pat. I miss her. In recent years, I missed her weekly telephone calls where we'd have a wonderful time talking about the events of the Society, the problems we had, the people that caused us problems, and also about the good things as well. Pat obviously was, as you all know, was very opinionated, and I'm happy to say that I hardly ever disagreed with her on her comments, which were always delightfully accurate. I have been a lifelong Society groupie, or fanboy, and I started up by the age of 10 and 12. I loved history. I saw the Society develop from a small group of ladies that started the Antiquarian Club in 1953 that included my mother, to a fully incorporated society in 1963. By that time, the Romeos were in North Reading and well established here. At the close of the 1950s, when the house was threatened, Pat joined the team with great enthusiasm. Pat, a great friend to my mother and a wonderful friend to me, was an amazing and talented woman. How can I ever begin to grasp her love of everything that was so diverse? Her interests included: she was a talented musician, an organist, a choir director, a lover of collies, chickens, Revere Beach history, and the history of her newly adopted town of North Reading. Serving as a police officer, a member of the community, a planning commission member, also her connection and active member of the Dames, the ladies group of the Minutemen Wives, where she was an active member in making sure that that everyone had very accurate costumes and attire. Pat knew everyone: politicians, people in the state, local officials, and many people in the world of the church, at home in the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston and also in Rome. Her friends included cardinals, bishops, monsignors, priests. She absolutely knew everyone. She also knew a whole world of professional folks in the museum world and those in preservation. Devoted to the Putnam House and this property, she loved telling the story of life in the 18th century to hundreds of children who did not know that in the days past, you didn't always go to the grocery store or the supermarket to get milk. You actually had cows, or the fact that eggs do come from chickens and not just in a cardboard box in the cooler at the store. North Reading town history, education, music, the organ, choirs, family, church, That was her life. She loved it. In a real way, she embodied the heart and soul and purpose of an important historic house museum and intuitively knew the ways to make it better. Frank was always there, and both of them made this property what it is today. Today, we honor them and know we need to keep the torch of preservation alight which they started. And I thank you.
Thank you so much. So I just want to say a few words on behalf of my family about our mother, and then my brother Tom will speak about my father, Frank Romeo. But today I'm speaking on behalf of my siblings, Lisa, David, Dan, and Tom, and then Tom will speak about my dad. So as early as I can remember, she was involved in the Historical Society and the preservation of North Reading and its history. The most vivid memories I have here are in the early 1970s when she was involved in saving the house, which was in disrepair. And I have a vague memory that Tom reminded me of on this trip, that when I was a little girl, my mom brought me in the house before it was saved, and it was all graffiti and broken glass, and I thought it was a haunted house. So I didn't know why they'd want to save it. So she spent her life trying to save this house and to be what it is today. It was her commitment to save the house and share the history. She loved the Minutemen too. She got my brothers and my dad involved, and they did many appearances over the years. And of course the Minutemen wear, as you see over here, do you want to model for us? There you go. Knickers and socks and the famous tri-corner hat. My mother had made these pieces by hand for my brothers and my father. And she herself wore traditional women's garb made by hand, so it would be super authentic. Now, my sister and I did not have these dresses, and thank God, because I was just entering high school, and this would have severely impacted my social status. So, but today I can appreciate the hard work and the detail that she put into this. So my mom loved the house, and especially the story behind it. She spent her life learning about the history of North Reading, and specifically the Reverend Daniel Putnam himself, the early settlers, and worked hard to continue with her school tours to share those stories. She gave tours to school children for as long as I can remember so that she could continue to educate future generations. She was instrumental in the town's elaborate celebration of 1976, marking the bicentennial. She was a force in the creation of one of the town's biggest landmarks, the bandstand, which meant so much to her, and she was a big influence in securing the funding for it and helping with the design of the bandstand itself. She was on numerous boards, such as the Historic District Commission, Police Station Renovation Committee, and others. Pat was elected for several terms to the Planning Commission and was committed to, again, preserving that historic story of North Reading. I specifically loved when she was on the Planning Commission, the story about when Walmart was coming to town, and she was on the Planning Commission, and she boasted to me about how the corporation came in and said they wanted to build a Walmart here, and she told them that they would have to change their architectural plans. It wasn't going to work, right? She said, "Get out. We will have brick and shutters." In the 1970s, she and my father became auxiliary police persons in the town, volunteering for special assignments, and then later they became special police officers. She was also a crossing guard at the Hood School for many years, and then later at the high school. And if you look at those storyboards back there, you will see a picture of my mother directing traffic in front of North Reading High School when I was a student there, dressed as Santa Claus at Christmas with a gun and holster. I got through that. Along with Pat and Frank, I want to have some shout outs here today to those who were committed to this house and this property all along. Icons like Nancy Ferretti, right there, Tom Parker, Gordon Hall, Billy Post. We wouldn't be here today without them. I also shout out, I remember Hugh Connor being a Minuteman, Gloria Mastro, who did a ton for the house as well. All will remain as part of the preservation and spirit of this today. So again, special thanks to Billy Post for setting up everything here, and to Lisa Green-Hupschman and Lisa Chicha for the food. Thank you guys. It was my mother's dream to preserve the history here, and so today This is also a call for action to get new members to the Historical Society, new volunteers, and new sponsors. She had hoped for a docent program so that this house could be open one day a month, so that people come in the community and take a little tour. And she would say to me in her last days, we don't have the manpower. And all you need is to get some more volunteers, some more people who are interested. So please share that with friends and family or anyone that's in the community, because not only does it keep North Reading special, it also keeps your real estate prices high. Just putting that out there. So keep that in mind. She loved her tours. And I have a clip of one of the tours that was recorded in 2012. Mary is going to help me play that now. It's a quick explanation of how North Reading became a town. Pretty fascinating, since I had no idea until I listened to the clip.
So, we all know where we are?
Yeah.
Where
Y'all hear it?
Coven House. Okay, do we know how old this house is?
No.
No. You do?
I think
What?
54 years old.
No, not even close. 291 years old.
Oh my God.
Almost 300 years old. Can you imagine? It is the first house that made North Reading really a separate place from all the other towns around. And the other towns are the towns that we know today as Reading and Wakefield. So Reading and Wakefield and North Reading were all one big town. So the people that lived up here were only a few folks. You know, maybe about 15 families. And they said, wow, this is really hard for us to get to the center of town. Especially in the spring when the river floods, and in the winter when it snows, our horses can't make it down there. It's really, really hard for us. So we would like to have our own meeting house. So please, can we become separate? Can we become our own separate parish? They used to call it a parish. And the people down in the center of town said, no, there's not enough people there. You can't support it. You don't have enough money to build a meeting house. I don't think you can do it. So several years went by, but eventually they did. They built a meeting house. And it took them 7 years to get somebody to run the meeting house. And what is your question?
What happens if they didn't go to church?
The what?
What happens if they didn't go to church?
I don't know what the punishment was. I don't think anybody ever said we're not going to go. So, anyway, yes.
Oh yeah. What was the town called when it was all three?
When it was all three, it was called Reading. Yeah. So, anyway, so they built the meeting house, and then they couldn't get somebody to come and run the meeting house. They had to have a minister to come and run the meeting house, and they couldn't get anybody. Nobody wanted to come to this North Parish of Reading. Nobody thought they wanted to live here where it was kind of wild, and there were lots of wild animals and only a few people, and they couldn't give them much money to come and do this and everything. So 7 years went by, and finally Daniel Putnam said, well, my wife's family comes from North Reading, and I think I will go to North Reading because those good people will give me 20 acres of land, and they said they'll build me a house. I have to bring the nails, and I have to bring the glass for the windows, but they'll build me a house. And I think it might be a good deal for me. So this is Daniel Putnam's house. So he became the minister.
And that's the story of the creation of North Reading and the Putnam House. Now I'd like to introduce my brother Tom, who's going to speak about the one and only amazing Frank Romeo.
Thank you all for coming. I'd like to recognize the members of the Board of Selectmen that showed up today. Thank you for coming. I can attest to the fact that that was my mother on the speaker, but that really wasn't my mother, honestly. Because she never talked like that to us. My dad was a very unique character. Man of very few words, but for those of you that knew him or didn't know him, he was a very intimidating fellow. He was tough as nails, strong as an ox. We grew up watching him. Photographs of two men on his back in the army. We watched him rip yellow pages in half, and for you millennials, those were phone books. We even once saw him pick up a car engine by himself. So he was strong as an ox, but he had a heart of gold. And he would do anything for anybody. We learned early on that sense of community was the most important thing to Frank. So I remember there was, throughout the late 60s, early 70s, when they got involved in the renovation of the Putnam House, and they got involved with the Minute Militia and some, like Mr. Hall and a lot of group of people, we all became very friendly. And we'd go over each other's houses. And they'd have what they call barn raisings. You know, so if a guy wanted to put a barn up at his house, all the neighborhood men would come down, and for a weekend they'd all build a barn at each other's house. And I know Gordon remembers it, but you know, I said to my father, I said, why would you do that? You worked all weekend long. You did it for free, and you got all sweaty and dirty, and you didn't spend any time with us. Well, why would you do that? He says, because someday I might need them. And that was the kind of guy he was. He never really did it for any other reason but to help out, and someday maybe somebody would help him out. So he was kind of, like I say, unique, because you really don't see that nowadays, where somebody would go the extra mile for their neighbor. We had a funny story. When we were kids, we went on one family vacation. We were kids, and that was to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And big trip, big Romeo family trip. So we all went up to New Hampshire to the cabin that my father had rented. Well, it rained every single day. So my father, in true Frank Romeo fashion, decided that the cabin needed some work. So he rebuilt the stairs, he put a railing up, and he actually fixed some of the wiring in the house. And as the story goes, the people we rented the house from asked my father to come back for the next 5 years because they needed more work done to the house. But he always wanted to leave it better than when he found it. And that was the true meaning of what he taught us, was leave it better than when you found it. Do what you can to make everything better. A lot of what my father did for this community was, he had all the skills and all the attributes, but a lot of it was because of my mother. My mother would tell him, come down to the Putnam House, we need work done. Or come down to the police station, I want to become an auxiliary police officer. And that's exactly what happened. So my mother kind of dragged him along, but my father loved it. He loved public service. He loved doing church traffic every Sunday. Once again, for free. It was all volunteer work, but he loved it. He loved being a part of an organization and giving back to the community. And he eventually became a special police officer, which was a full police powers, where he would actually ride in the police cruiser. And Christine talks about being embarrassed because her mother was directing traffic up from the high school. Well, try working a patrol shift with your mother and father. It didn't go over too well. And I actually, because I was a full-time officer and my parents were part-time officers, I kind of was their boss sometimes. And once again, the public Mrs. Romeo and the private Mrs. Romeo are two different Mrs. Romeos. Anyway, my father truly loved working for the police department. It was almost like it was meant to be. He loved every single day. He put the uniform on, and excuse me. I'm trying.
Frank was very well respected throughout the community. He never expected or wanted recognition for his public deeds. When Frank passed, the North Reading Police named the Officer of the Year Award the Frank J. Romeo Award in his honor for his dedication to the department and the town. This award is a true testament to his life and what he brought to this community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So true. And by the way, when my father passed and I flew in from California, at his wake, it was cold, it was around Thanksgiving, and the line was around the corner and down the street. And I had thought I was such a jet setter, traveling and doing all this stuff. And when I saw 700 people in line to pay their respects, I knew he did something right. So at this point, I would like to ask Billy Post to say a few words. One of our Minutemen, check out this wardrobe.
How we all doing? I'll try to keep this a little short and sweet. I met Pat 20 years ago, almost to this day. I organized a family reunion on these grounds after visiting Croswell's on a number of occasions. This is when my family was actually grew up and saved. The last Putnam took in my grandmother and her 8 kids, and my father, who was at the end over here, grew up here farming. One of the last time this property was farmed. But I want to speak about what Pat and all the old founders of the Historical Society brought with them, and kind of reminded us what this property actually stands for. It is community spirit, togetherness. This house was built by a community, as you heard on our tape, with only a few families, but wanted to have their own meeting house and have their own pastor and be able to go to meetings without having to go to, which is what now Wakefield Center, which was the center of Reading, ancient Reading at the time. And they did it as a community. This property still, to this day, brings us together and reminds us that we are one small community that loves each other, and we get together. And if any of you would like to help us continue to keep this preservation going on, as you can see what the Minutemen and the original Minutemen have done, they've brought the actual first meeting house that was built 300 years ago right there. The very first house ever built in North Reading, the Flint House, which was a garrison where families went to escape Indian attacks. That meeting house. We have that spirit still here, but we're losing people, and I am so sorry. I miss Pat every day. She was a tough cookie, but she had passion for what she did. And all those people that were here originally, they gave their heart and soul. I've been on tours with Nancy Ferretti. First time I ever saw her doing a tour with the kids at the schoolhouse, she wowed me. She knocked it out, all right? They performed. They were all performers. Tom, I've been with him, and he's the same way. When he gives a tour of the barn, it's incredible, the history that these guys know. And Pat was absolutely the same. I loved watching her with the school kids over here. So again, thank you for coming. We are also today going to present Pat's children with a copy of a book that was donated to us by Nancy Baylor Miller, and it is there's short profiles of various people in town, but there's one here on Pat, and she was amazing what she did in her lifetime. All right, thank you again.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you. Nancy Peretti. Yes. Well, we grew up with Nancy, so she is just part of the team, and I'm so grateful that you came today.
You want me to hold this for you?
Oh, that would be great.
I will.
Thank you. I need my glasses. Thank you, Christine,
You're welcome.
for organizing this tribute for your mom and dad, Pat and Frank Romeo. Thanks to the Historical Society for housing and installing a commemorative plaque in the Putnam House acknowledging, imagine, 75 years of service. And thank you, Abby, wherever you are now, for sharing your musical talents. Somehow I think your grandmother was listening. I have that in my mind. Pat Spinelli was the star. Pat Spinelli, that was her maiden name, in case you didn't know. Pat Spinelli was the star of a Boston University recital class. She was among the chosen few to sing in Carnegie Hall for the debut of Carl Orff's Carmina Burana. The College of Music was in Copley Square at that time, as was SPRC, the School of Public Relations and Communications. Coincidentally, my childhood friend Barbara O'Brien was a secretary there. So I introduced Barbara to Pat, and the rest is history. My husband, Chet Ferretti, a renowned trumpet player, was also a student at BU. After his death, my children, Lisa and Michael, and I moved back to North Reading. The Romeo and O'Brien families were legends in the community. Pat and Barbara were making plans for the bicentennial ball and were largely responsible for the renovation of the David Tavern, the Putnam House, and the creation of a current historic site. Pat was the mistress of the Putnam House, and I became the schoolmarm, conducting tours for students and patrons. Frank Romeo, special police officer and constable, created his own legacy. Together, they created a family known for their special talents, children David, Dan, Tommy, Lisa, and Christine. No family has contributed more to the preservation of our town's history and its legacy. They are indeed the first family of North Reading.
Thank you, Nancy. Gordon Hall, I understand you're going to share with us today. I sure hope so. Gordon is another legend. He was a Minuteman with my father, so we're so grateful to have you here.
Legend, wow.
Yes.
You notice I have no notes, so let's see what happens.
Oh, God.
But Pat was responsible for so many things. Since 1974, she contacted me. I don't know how she knew me, but she and Gordon Berridge. She and Gordon Berridge were on the Bicentennial Committee, and I knew Gordon, and maybe that's why she got my number. I don't know. But anyway, she said we got to form a Minuteman group, and that's what we did in 1974. And she knew her history, something out of this world. But anyhow, we formed a Minuteman group. There were 40 of us, and we had such talent. It's unbelievable. And we built a nice organization, and as you can imagine, that was just 50 years ago this year. Another thing that she did was during the bicentennial, she asked some of us to take part in the oral history. So we would go to the different elderly people in town and ask them if they would tell us, we would record their stories about growing up in North Reading. And there were about 5 or 6 of us, and we have all of those tapes. The Historic Society has those tapes. Included in those tapes is the Pat's speech on November 19th, 76, on the Common with the bell ringing in the background. So that tape is available here. If not, I have one, if anybody wants to hear it. I'm trying to think of all the things that she had us. So then, in about 1980, the Minutemen didn't have too much to do, marching and so forth. And Jim Stewart was our captain, and he called us all together. He said, Pat Romeo told us that we've got to go up on Route 28 and we've got to dismantle an 1840 schoolhouse because the bulldozers are on their way. You've heard that before. Well, so we went ahead with it. We dismantled it, and it was good fun. Matter of fact, they called it the Puddin' Point School. That's what we thought we were dismantling, because I think a person ate a bowl of pudding every day or something. Anyway, it didn't turn out to be the correct name, but we had fun with it. And we brought the pieces down here, and we leaned them against a tree down here, because we had no money for the foundation. So after a fashion, by country dances and auctions, we raised some money for the foundation. And the word came down that those Minutemen, they'll never put that building up. It's just the tip of the iceberg taking it down. That'll never be up. That weekend, we had 3 sides stood up. And so anyway, that was a good project, and we worked on that. And then the Historic Society knew they were looking for the foundation for the Sergeant Flint House, and they knew about where it was located. It was the first building to be built in what is now North Reading. So they couldn't, Mr. Parker and Pat, they were over about a quarter of a mile from here, trying to find the foundation. Well, they never did, but come to find out, the Gowing house, it was a farmhouse, burned, I think in 1994. And what was unbeknownst to them, the Sergeant Flint house was attached to that building. And that's where people used to come and get their vegetables. So Pat said, you Minutemen, you got to get over there and dismantle that. And that's how she would say it too. So we took it apart, and we salvaged 3 of the main beams. The building was built in 1669. And the main beams, then we hired someone to put to erect the rest of the beams around it. But those beams are still in that building and are well kept. So then she calls me up and she says, Gordon, the second meeting house, as you know, is down in the lower Elm Street. And they're disassembling. You got to get down there and get some of that lumber. And so I did. And so some of that lumber is in the first meeting house on those the benches that you see in there from some of the material from the second meeting house. And I lost my train of thought, but there was other things that took place. Oh, she called me up and she said, listen, I want you to start, get a bunch of the folks together so that we can have what is called the Tales of North Reading. And you are going to be the facilitator. Facilitator wasn't in my vocabulary, but I learned what it was. So I got a whole of different people. Lyman Fancy, Eddie Wheeler, Ken Jones, and Alice Tarbox, and different ones. And I would go to some of them, I'd say, listen, they going to have a meeting up at the library, and they want you to tell stories about North Reading. Well, it was a riot because some of a slight grin across their face, and I don't know nothing, and so forth. Well, when we had that meeting, it was so much fun because those people that said they knew nothing were on their feet all the time. So anyway, those are some of the things that she brought to the town, and she was just a wonderful person. And Frank was the greatest guy. He was so helpful to us and such a wonderful individual. So I don't know if I've covered it very well, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have so many memories of you and my father in that traditional outfit and that hat. it brings back a lot of memories. But I just want to thank everybody. We're going to wrap it up now, but I do want to say just a couple of things. One is the Putnam House is open right now, and if you're from North Reading or near North Reading and you've never been inside of it, please go inside and just walk through. It's pretty remarkable what they recreated. And then all these other buildings are also open, so please have a look and see all of the amazing history here. And lastly, this is a call for action as well, that if you know anybody that's willing to be a docent or join or share ideas or give their time, great. And we also wanted to have this as a fundraiser. There's a donation little house over there by the food. Make a donation of any kind to the Historical Society. And if anyone's here that didn't help me with this event and wants to do the thing with Abby and take a selfie, she's going to be in the schoolhouse. Just make a donation of any kind and then go ahead and have a meet with her. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.